Hi, and we're back. So the window has opened up. This is the game engine layout that we are looking at. And these are the things that you need to be aware of what we are going to be working with while we are in Unreal. This is your preview window. Right? Now, movement and navigation through that window, what you're going to do is if you would like to move and pan around this way, this is your left mouse button. Holding down your left mouse button and moving around will allow you to slide around on a plane, and you can turn around and you can see things and you can do all kinds of stuff. Moving up and down like this is the utilization of both the left and right mouse buttons held down together. All right, so left does this, left and right does this, right will roll you around. This is the right mouse button only. Left and right together, and then right will roll you around and allow you to see things this way. This takes some getting used to. If you're not used to working in a 3D program like this, they're all different, but this does take a little bit of getting used to. And you can see that this is the entire world. There are some things that are in here. I talked earlier about this is a blank world, but there are some things that are in here. What you are seeing here in this preview window, you can see there's a grid. There is a box shape right here. There is this little icon, which if you zoom in on it, keeps getting smaller and smaller because it doesn't actually appear on your screen. This is your player start. So if I go here to play the game, which we'll do in a minute, this is where I'm going to start, and this is the direction in which I'm going to be facing. You also see up here clouds and a sky dome. That is a standard element that is in here, and it is adjustable. We can fix that, and we'll be doing that this semester. There is a sun up there. You can have the sun, you can have a moon, you can do whatever you want to do. You also have a little lens flare going on that's associated with that, which is a little 3D trick to make things look realistic. One of the things I always tell students is cinematographers and movies are paid a lot of money not to get that effect. Not to have a camera look directly at that. That's what simulates light bouncing through the lenses on a camera. And cinematographers worth their salt are paid not to do this because that's something you don't want to see. But 3D artists, we always add those things in there because it makes it look like it's realistic. It's a real world occurrence. But the sky dome up there, the animated clouds, this is all a complicated system of animated clouds up there. It's really basically an animated texture or material, and we'll talk more about materials and textures and the difference between those two things later on in another video. But it's kind of a basic world there. Now, up here across the top of the screen, we have some basic commands. I'm not going to show you the file menus up there because they're pretty standard, and they pretty much open up everything that's right there. As in most programs, there's repetition going on. So we have save, we have a thing called source control, which I'm going to skip for right now. I'll talk about that in a later video. Content, marketplace, settings, blueprints, matinee, build, play, and launch. Right? Save obviously works the way you think a save would work. Content is the same as this information down here on the bottom of the screen. There is a content folder, and we'll come back to that in just a moment. Marketplace, if you want to go find a particular model or a particular effect that you would like to use, you can actually switch right here, go into the marketplace from the game, get what you need, and it will automatically import it for you. Settings. This particular thing I am going to cover more when I talk a little bit more about setting your computer to run Unreal if it's not running very well. I'll come back to this one later on, but there are some basic preferences that are set up in through here. There's a world settings and a project settings, and when you're reading in the book, which is the first thing that you have to do, you're going to go into your project settings and make some changes in through there. So we will cover these in separate videos a little bit later on. Blueprints as well, we're going to cover these in separate videos of what a blueprint is, what a different blueprint class is. I can tell you here right off the bat that, for example, what a blueprint is. If I had a door, I'm creating an environment, let's say, I have a doorway, and the doorway has to open when I walk up to it. I want to step into a little trigger and have the door open up, and I walk through it, and when I leave the little trigger area, the door closes behind me. There are two ways to do that. One, well, let's say I have an environment that's got 50 doors. I can create 50 doors, and I can create 50 little trigger panels, and every time I walk up to the door, that particular trigger that I step on will open up that particular door. And when I leave that trigger, it will close that particular door. And if I have 50 doorways like that, I have to create 50 of them. Well, a relatively new advancement in Unreal is what's called a blueprint. And I'll just stick with the door example to explain what a blueprint does. There are all kinds of different blueprints, but in this particular example, why do I have to create 50 triggers and 50 doors when they all do exactly the same thing? So what I can do is I can create something called a blueprint class, and that allows me to create a single door with a single trigger, and every time you walk up and step in that trigger, it opens up that door. And then I can save that combination of two different elements together in a single object, or a single asset, we call it. And that asset then can be picked up and used as many times as I want. So I still have to put 50 of them out there, but I don't have to do all of the code work to set up 50 individual triggers and 50 individual doors. I do it once, and then I use it around the room. The beauty about blueprints is you would think that a drawback to that might be that I have maybe some doors have to behave differently. Do I have to create a blueprint class for each of those doors? The answer is no. Each of those doors can be adjusted. So I can create a blueprint that contains the basics. Step on a trigger, door opens, leave the trigger, door closes. And then I can say, okay, now here's what I want to happen. On a particular door, I need you to punch in a code. So I can edit a blueprint, I can make a duplicate of that blueprint, and I can edit it to do what I want it to do specifically, but I still can skip the basic setup of everything. So blueprints are kind of nice. Everything that you see that's of any use in this game, including characters, are blueprints. Because there are the character walks, it jumps, it fires a weapon, it does all of those things. Those are all pre-built into a basic character and listed as blueprints. So you're going to see these are going to become very valuable. We're going to have a whole week talking about blueprints and setting some things up. Matinee. The matinee up here is for doing individual animations. Let's say I want a door to open and close based on a particular event. A matinee would be used on a single door to open and close the way I want it to do. And this is how we handle our animations. We're going to cover matinees separately as well. Building. Excuse me. Building, this has to do with your lights and your models. And I'll talk about this a little bit more. I've only got 15 minutes per video. And this one would take about 15 minutes to explain building of lights and things like that. But what this does is that when you take objects and you put them in your scene, with the basic lighting that is in there, it casts shadows on the ground and kind of sets it up and makes it so you can go through and play the level and see how things are going to look. All the materials look good. The textures all appear where they're supposed to. The shadows are all where they're supposed to be. If you move an object, you have to go back and relight the scene if you expect to see your scene with new shadows and everything else. And the best example I can give of this is you put an object into a scene. You drop an asset like a box into a scene and you build your lighting. It figures out where the shadows have to be based off of the current lights in your scene and then projects those shadows on the ground. If you then delete that box, the shadows will remain on the ground. And if you go in and play the game again, you will see no box, but you will see the shadows where the box was. If you rebuild the lighting, it computes where the shadows are, and that shadow goes away. So this is going to be based off of how complicated your scene is, how many things there are in your scene, and it can take anywhere up to an hour to build the lighting in your scene, depending upon what your scene is, how many things are in there, and what kind of computer you're working from. The play menu right here. If we go and play, I can click that button, and I can go in, and I can then move around through my environment. Right click again moves me around lets me pan around in different directions, and then your WASD keys are what are going to move you through it. Now there is collision. I'm colliding with the ground. I'm moving around. If I go off the side, I can fly off the side and hang out over here. I can go underneath and look up. I can do all kinds of different things, but there is no player, and there's no walking or a sense of any of that. You're just sort of flying around your scene and checking things out. Okay, that's what that does. If you want to escape this, you just hit escape, and it goes away and does that. And then launching up here, what launching will do would be to set your launching on a particular device. How would you like that to do? You want to run it on a computer, you want to run it on Android, you want to run it on a different device. That's where we're going to go to do that. Right? In the next video I'm going to show you, we're going to talk about your modes over here, and then we'll talk about your world outliner and your world settings. And then the last video I'll do, we'll talk a little bit about your content browser down here.